It's kind of the way I feel.
Yeah. Hey guys, welcome back to some more reviews. Explorer 4 here, Warboy 465, and today we're doing a live stream, and I'm joined by
Steve from Redband Cast. Glad to be here, Nate. Really glad to be joining another live stream and talking some Child's Play.
Awesome, man. Sorry I didn't give you enough time to chew. I see it's like Steve here. Sorry about that, man. No, but we're finally doing our live stream, guys. We've actually been very busy. A lot of us have. We've been trying to get another live stream on track, and a lot of the times we've just all been busy. It's been a very busy school year and work year for us all. And so we're gonna try and get these live streams going as much as we can, but it might take a little like it might take a minute because we're gonna have to get these back on track and the schedule back on track and everything. But we are back, and today we are discussing the Child's Play franchise. And this is a franchise that honestly I feel is kind of like the horror franchise along with Chainsaw that kind of gets a little overlooked. So it does get a lot of surprise mentions a lot, which is really awesome. But it's a franchise that, you know, I think is a little bit overshadowed by, and this is not saying anything negative about these franchises, but, you know, the Halloween franchise, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, those all kind of do take the spot, and Child's Play a lot kind of is the surprising franchise. It's the franchise that, you know, surprises you with its new entries, and I've always noticed that about the Child's Play franchise. For me personally, there's only probably one bad film, and the rest I either love or I think are okay, or enough not to say that they're bad or anything like that. But it's a franchise that I think is a very interesting one. The concept in general is a very unique and different concept that, you know, we've probably seen only a very few times before, whether it be the Twilight Zone or be a couple of films before this, maybe I don't even know if it's maybe a handful, because I know that the only thing that I gathered was from Twilight Zone, and I know there was a movie that came out right after this, like Dolly Dearest, which was pretty much a ripoff. And I don't know, it just showed that, you know, you could have this idea, and it's a very controversial, a very controversial idea because of the subject matter that we're dealing with. And I think the franchise, you know, I think I commend it for that. I think it's awesome that it did that and took a chance like that and had a very bold plot line, a very bold story. And I just love the idea of this possessed killer doll. I think that's just so classic. It's so original. And I just, you know, and real quick, we're going to get into the first movie here in a second. And we'll sort of talk about how I just love the beginning of the franchise, how it starts off with the suspense and the build and stuff like that. But the Child's Play franchise, I think, is a big slasher film franchise, a big impact on slasher film history and on horror film history. It's a franchise that I have a lot of respect for. I did individual reviews for her, so if you guys want to check that out, you guys can. But it's a franchise that, like I said, is kind of an underdog. It's a surprising franchise. I'm a really big fan of it, and I can't get enough of it. I always watch Chucky movies. They're really fun to watch, and I enjoy the franchise. But anyway, Steve, what is your thoughts on the franchise in general, like the overall franchise?
So I agree with you in that I think that it's a really original idea. Yes, as you said, there were a couple of movies before it that included either dolls or ventriloquist dummies or stuff like that. One notable film, at least, well, there are a couple of notable films, actually, now that you think of it, who sort of took this route. So, of course, there's the classic Twilight Zone episodes. There are, I think there might be a couple of Tales from the Dark Side episodes about this. There's a little bit of literature that might involve a little bit of it. But the only films that I can think of off the top of the head, like two feature-length films that I think actually did this, were one segment from the film Tales of Terror, TV movie from 1973, anthology movie in which a You have 3 stories, all starring Karen Black, and it's the 3rd story and final story, which involves a Zuni fetish doll attacking Karen Black. So it is, I guess, kind of a toy, but it's more like a religious symbol than anything. So you've got that. There's also a movie from like the 60s called Magic, starring a ventriloquist dummy, but that's not quite a doll. There is a movie from 1986, just a couple years before this, directed by Stuart Gordon, called Dolls. But again, I think they're mostly like puppet dolls as opposed to like children's toys, or maybe they're like ceramic dolls that old, the kind that old ladies would collect or whatever.
Yeah, I forgot that dolls were for child's play. Totally forgot that.
Yeah, but this, I think, is the first time where you have this mass-marketed children's toy that is in high demand turning evil. So this is basically a perversion of the Cabbage Patch dolls, basically, and the Teddy Ruxpin dolls and stuff like that. That's exactly what this is. And I think that's incredibly original and interesting. It takes a sort of sharp edge towards materialism and greed and stuff like that, which I think is cool. Really, that's only present in the first movie. The rest of the movies are basically, well, actually, I do think that in the second and third, it's a little bit more, it's still apparent. But then after you get after the second and third, they sort of go off into like, well, we're just going to try to have fun with a bunch of blood and gore. And I think that's fine. But there's some interesting stuff in this series. I do think that, like you, Nate, I think this is sort of an underrated series. It seems to be more accepted by more mainstream horror audiences than it does the hardcore or horror audiences, who I think ought to like them a little bit better. For instance, the guys over at Dead Pit always said something along the lines of like, oh, well, Chucky is sort of like the people who aren't really into horror are obsessed with Chucky. And I can see that. I mean, you got all these girls who dress up in this sort of like Bride of Chucky costumes at conventions, or even girls who do like a sexy Chucky costume, which is a little bit disturbing in the fact that it even exists.
Yeah, that's a little excessive.
But still, I mean, it's kind of true. But these movies, even though they do sort of exist within a mainstream structure, also poke fun at the mainstream. And I kind of like that about them. Especially I like the one that came out a few years ago, Curse of Chucky, which totally just sort of pokes fun at like the main version of horror that's going around today, which is a sort of like the suspenseful ghost films that are basically, James Wan style. Series quite a bit. I've been watching it lately, and I remember well, that was weird. Did I leave for a second?
I didn't notice it.
Okay, well, something weird happened with my computer. Anyway, I've been watching it lately, and I gain a new appreciation for these movies every time that I watch them, I think. I think that personally, you say you think there's one movie that sucks in here. I think there's maybe 1.5 movies that suck. It's sort of hard to explain, but we'll get to that bridge when we cross it. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But yeah, I'm interested in talking about these because I think they're relatively overlooked as far as the hardcore horror fans go.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree. I don't know. It's just the fact that, what really, to mention the surprising factor for what I said, what really surprised me about this franchise a lot is, you wouldn't, I don't know, I guess that's really hard to word it, but, a lot of people looking at this idea wouldn't think this franchise would go as far as it did. I mean, this is a franchise about a killer doll. I think it's very split handled. Like, some think it's creepy, some think it's not. For me, I don't think it's like terrifyingly creepy that's gonna give me nightmares at night, but I think the general idea that we can all relate to that. We can all relate. It's like Freddy Krueger. We can relate going because we all sleep. You know, we all have dreams. We all have nightmares, and you know, we can all relate to that. That's what's so great about the Freddy movies. The Jason movies, you know, we've been camping, summer camp before, we know how that goes. Halloween, we know the atmosphere of October and being scared in October, we know all that. And with Chucky, we know that there were toys that we used to have as a kid, and we always used to wonder if they would come to life or not. What if this thing was alive, or maybe if it did, or maybe if it did come alive, it'd be really terrifying. And that's another really a big thing that I really like with this movie is like it's very relatable. It's just it makes you to where, man, if I was a kid and that happened to me, what would I do? How would I react to that? You know, I think it's just, and I do agree with you. It's like I find it more in the mainstream. I definitely do agree with you on that. I find it a lot in the mainstream. Like if I go up in public and I ask people, you know, oh, you know what Chucky is? Oh yeah, I love that franchise. But a lot of the bigger like people that know like deep horror fans and big horror fans, a lot of them, you know, either by a franchise point of view, say that it's not really a good franchise, which is totally fine. It's their opinion. It's totally fine. For me though, I just take a step back. I just love the franchise, like as a whole, not just because the first two movies. No, like there's a lot of good movies in this franchise. And I'll be honest with you guys. There's been a lot of, you know, mixed reaction with the new movie. And to be honest, I had kind of a mixed reaction at first when I heard that title, Cult of Chucky, because I'm like, Cult of Chucky, what are they going to do with this? I'm like, because when I heard that, I was expecting something like Halloween 6. And I was like, man, don't be that. Please not be another Halloween 6. Please don't be. And luckily, it's not what I expected. The trailer really surprised me, took me off guard. And I was like, all right, you know, maybe I'm missing something, but I still don't know why it's called Call of Chucky. But maybe I'll have to rewatch that trailer. Maybe I missed something. But, you know, the title was what I got introduced to at first. And I was like, that title, you know. But I think that now it looks really good, and I can't wait for it. And it's going to be an awesome movie when it comes out. It looks very good. It's good to see Brad Dourif back as Chucky. Chucky to be back on the screen again. It's going to be awesome, and I can't wait. But to get into to kick off the franchise, we're talking about the very first Child's Play, which is a Tom Holland film. Came out in 87 or 88? I always get confused with that.
88.
I always, for some reason, I always want to say 87. But I'm like, no, I think it's 88. But it's a 1988 film. Tom Holland directed it. Tom Holland, of course, Fright Night. Did a lot of really good stuff. He was also an actor in Hatchet 2, which he did a really good job in that film. And I think Tom Holland really brings that atmosphere of directing. Because I'm a really big fan of Fright Night, I'm going to try and pull up the rest of the movie. I think I've seen a couple of Tom Holland. I know he did Psycho 2, or he wrote Psycho 2.
He did write Psycho 2, which, you know, if people have seen Psycho 2, I mean, you know, obviously it's not directed by him, so it's not necessarily, you know, his vision or whatever. But that's a really well-written movie and keeps you guessing, keeps you on your feet, and, you know, is a surprisingly good, like, sequel to probably one of the greatest films of all time.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of good stuff about Psycho 2. Fortunately, I've seen the first movie. And for the longest time, I didn't. But I was really impressed with the first movie. Very well made. He's also the director, real quick, to get on the directing of Tom Holland real quick, because I forgot. Fright Night 2, which I'm a really big fan of. He wrote Psycho 2. He didn't really direct a lot of movies, I've noticed this. He did a segment of Masters of Horror. He did Thinner. He did a movie called The Temp. He did a movie called Fatal Beauty, which I've heard about. And Fright Night was his first director debut. And yes, Psycho 2, I've heard a lot of good things about, though. The first movie I seen, I loved it. It's a classic, an absolute masterpiece. I really did the first movie. And I do want to see the second movie. I'm looking for a box set, actually, of the that's from 2 to that Bates Motel direct-to-video movie. And when I get that, I'll pretty much have the Psycho movie. So it'll be cool to get into that. I heard that the franchise is actually pretty decent. And for the longest time looking into it, I was like, man, there's like 5 movies total. There's like an original 4-movie franchise, and I was thinking, man, it probably didn't go that well. But no, I've heard some surprising things about the franchise, and I have to say that it's definitely a franchise that I have to get more into because so far I've only seen the first movie. Same with The Fly. Like the only movie I've seen from the Fly franchise is the remake with Jeff Goldblum, and that's a really good movie. But I really want to see The Fly 2, the original Fly, and that original, The Curse of the Fly, and I think it's The Curse of the Fly. There's like Fly 2, Curse of the Fly, right? Or is it just Curse of the Fly?
All right. So there's The Fly from the early 50s with Vincent Price. And then there's one right after that, like a couple of years after that, because I think the original Fly was a pretty big hit, called Revenge of the Fly. And there might have been one more after Vincent Price left the series, but I can't remember exactly what it is. I think it's like Curse of the Fly or something like that, like you were saying. And then they moved on into the 2 remakes from David Cronenberg and Mick Garris. Well, no, wait, Mick Garris didn't direct the remake of Part 2, but he did write it. It's one of Mick Garris's early jobs, I think, as far as like being in Hollywood and not just
would you say that
special features.
Would you say that, like, this is just in general my thoughts on The Fly? I didn't see it for the longest time, and I was like, all right, it's going to be a pretty good movie. Would you agree with me on this? Now, I know that not everybody is going to, but I just had to get this out. David Cronenberg's The Fly is like one of the greatest movies I've ever witnessed in my entire life. I'm just going to say that right now. That movie is a freaking masterpiece. I loved it.
It has some brilliant special effects. It's really, really well shot. I love all the symbolism in it. It's like, for a David Cronenberg movie, like surprisingly light on like the nudity and sexual content, which is actually preferable to a guy like me. I do own it. It's like right over there on my Blu-ray shelf. I've seen it once, maybe twice, but I was a big fan when I watched it originally. I was like, the special effects are just brilliant. Like you can't get better special effects in the 80s unless you're somebody like Rob Bottin. And I don't know, I love the special effects, especially. I haven't seen the rest of the Fly movies, so I can't really judge which is the best. I started watching the original from Vincent Price, which, like, the beginning of it hit me like a ton of bricks because it's not like the 1950s and they're showing like a ton of gore for the 1950s. But yes, I think that The Fly, maybe not one of my favorite movies, but for like especially a sci-fi horror movie from the 80s, in which there were a lot of good sci-fi horror movies, it stands out. Like everybody goes off about the 1988 Blob, and I think that's a fun movie and everything, but The Fly stands far above that. That's like, I don't know, if I were to do like my favorite sci-fi horrors of the 80s, like that would be right below The Thing, I think. Like it's The Thing, The Fly. It's very close. And of course, both based on 50s sci-fi horror movies. But yeah, I really like The Fly. That's a great movie. Hey, if that's one of your favorite movies, that's definitely like a justifiable favorite movie. I used to date a girl that like thought her favorite movie was like The Princess Diaries. That's not a good movie to be your favorite movie. You can't be proud about saying my favorite movie is The Princess Diaries. You can be proud about saying my favorite movie or one of my favorite movies is The Fly,
Oh, we got Gideon here. What's up, Gideon? What's up, man?
Hey, my dudes. What's up?
Nothing. We're talking about the Child's Play franchise. We're still in the first movie, but we just got done talking about Cronenberg's Fly. The Fly. It's a really good movie.
Yeah.
Like, what are your thoughts on it, man?
Hey, Redband.
Oh, what's up, Gideon? How you doing?
Nothing much, man. Just had a midlife crisis.
Midlife crisis? You're too young for that.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, that's what I call not having a girlfriend.
Ha! There you go.
I want a golf girl.
So what are your opinions on The Fly, my man?
Well, The Fly. Truthfully, I have to agree with David Cronenberg when he said he had somewhat of a fetish about people transforming into humans. Like, I mean, I don't really have a fetish about it, but it did make him kind of horny, he said. which I do find that pretty stimulating.
Yeah,
Cronenberg
has a lot of overtones onto it, though. It's a very overtoned movie.
Yeah. I mean, what really kind of killed me is when, like, he started taking off his fingernails, because I always had, like, a very huge fear of that, because I'd be like, oh! But yeah, seriously though, The Fly is actually a really good movie. It's one of my inspirations for some of my upcoming animations, actually, because I just enjoy David Cronenberg's work. Like, he perfected body horror.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. I think it's just so crazy how he can make you so afraid of this, like, you know, what you are. It's the cells, the body. I think that's awesome how you can do that. Make you just fear that diseases and decay, like all that stuff. It's really, really good how you can tap into that fear and just really explore it.
Yeah.
It's interesting to learn that David Cronenberg is like a committed, like, leftist atheist, and yet all of his movies are about the flesh and material turning against us, which is a very like deeply Christian theme. But at the same time, he's always trying to go into these really deep, dark, atheistic areas, and I think he wishes that all of his movies could reflect that. But really, they reflect much more of a Christian worldview, although also at the same time filled with violence and sex and nudity and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Right. But to get back onto more of the Child's Play path, I forgot where we were at with the first movie. We kind of went off a little bit, but that's fine. We're live. We just do that sometimes. It's totally fine. But I'll actually get your guys' opinions on it first. Getting, if you want to go, what is your thoughts on the very first Child's Play?
Well, I don't mean to sound like I'm weird here, though, but I mean, Child's Play really never even caught my attention that much, because, I mean, yeah, we always used to be afraid of Chucky, but most of all, I kind of like moved on from it. Like, it doesn't really terrify me. And now I've been doing other things with, you know, like certain kind of different horrors. Like, pretty much what I'm very big into now is the unknown, the horror of unknown. But most of all, I really did enjoy Child's Play. I actually got to go meet, Brad Dourif at a horror convention. He was actually a pretty chill guy.
That's cool, man. It's my dream to meet some of the horror icons. It really is.
I'm actually going to meet Bill Moseley soon.
Oh, that's going to be awesome, dude. Unfortunately, I can't go to Scarefest this year.
Same.
Maybe in a few. I have to get that all planned out because I kind of live a little far from it. But, you know, it should be fun once I get there.
Yeah.
So, Steve, what are your thoughts on the original 1987, my bad, 88 Child's Play?
Well, I am actually a really big fan of this movie, becoming more of a fan of it every time I watch it. So my experience with this movie kind of goes back to, kindergarten and the, primary grades, where they would talk all about all these. It's a really weird thing for kids to talk about on the playground, but man, like, you gotta remember, like, there were some of those kids whose parents were totally okay with them watching, like, Nightmare on Elm Street when they were 4 years old or something like that. And these were the type of kids that I would sort of learn these sort of stereotypes of horror or from. And Chucky was one of the ones that they brought up. And he was never one that I was like, well, that sounds incredibly scary. Because for some reason, like I was never scared of Chucky or the idea of Chucky. I mean, when I got into horror, I was 13, so it was kind of tough to scare me even at that point. But the first time I watched it, I was like 14, 13 years old, and picked it up at a freaking Kmart for like $5 on DVD, and I was like, I really want to see this. Picked it up, watched it, and I thought, hey, this is a pretty fun little movie. And it was probably in my top 10 for a few weeks or so. But, then you sort of let it fall behind because, you get into deeper, darker stuff as you learn more about horror movies. But I am actually a bigger fan of this now because I've watched it back a few times. And yeah, it can be cheesy. Yeah, it can be silly. But the first one actually carries a lot of really deep, interesting themes. And it's a movie, like Nate and I were talking about this before we started, that like inadvertently, maybe not quite what we were talking about, but sort of almost inadvertently advocates for Christianity, in that it advocates specifically against voodoo and makes fun of voodoo in a way, kind of like James Bond did in the in the original Live and Let Die. I don't know. I like that movie a lot. I think it's probably the biggest strength of that movie is Brad Dourif. Next would be the writing, and then like right up next to Dourif and the writing, like maybe even on the same level, would be the special effects by Kevin Yeager. He just does some brilliant stuff with those animatronics, and I don't know. There's a lot of really good stuff in that movie, and specifically, I would highlight the mom's performance. I can't remember her name off the top of my head. Can you guys remember her name?
I really don't know either.
Catherine Hicks?
Yeah, Catherine Hicks. Thank you. Now Catherine Hicks. Catherine Hicks is actually married to Kevin Yeager, and they've stayed together for like 20, 30 years, however long it's been since the original Child's Play. But they're married now, and that's of course a wonderful thing. But also, I mean, she just gave a fantastic performance. That moment near the end where she's taking the gun and just won't stop shooting at Chucky even after she's out of bullets. You can just see in her eyes and in her face that she is broken and she will never be the same again. I love that moment, and I love her reactions. I love how she tries to laugh stuff off sometimes, which is kind of the way that we, I think, look at things. We try to laugh stuff off, especially stuff that's deeply serious and stuff that's deeply disturbing to us. Sometimes it's so hysterically creepy to us or hysterically important that we have to laugh or else we'll break down. So I like that. I like the movie a lot, and I grow an appreciation for it every time that I watch it. It wouldn't be in my favorite horror movies yet, as far as like a top 10 or something like that. It's definitely up there for my favorite like 80s horror movies though. So pretty darn good movie.
Yeah, definitely, man. For me, with the original Child's Play, what's so funny about this is that, looking back on it now, I'm surprised I love the movie as much as I do. I mean, I really can't get enough of Child's Play. I think it's always been a movie that I thought was a very well crafted film. The way that everything was approached, the way that Tom Holland directed it, the way the shots are, the way the filming is, the way the score is, the way the animatronics are. I mean, I just think it's such a well-made movie. I just really can't get over how well this movie's made. And I think a really big thing I respect about this movie is that it could have been a silly time, which later sequels would have become. It could have been like that, but I love how he just went, we're going to take it seriously. We're going to see how this goes. We're going to see how this goes. We're going to take it to a serious level. And we're going to keep it at a very dark and really dingy story. And I think the first movie, I really did not grow up with it. The first time I seen it, I was about maybe 13. I grew up a lot with Child's Play 2. A lot with Child's Play 2. I watched Child's Play 2 when I was probably maybe 7 or 8. I was really young, and it scared the crap out of me. And, the second movie I grew up with and I still love to this day, but the first movie is definitely just a very classic horror film. And I think it's just in my opinion, the well-done piece. The performances by Catherine Hicks, Chris Sarandon, Alex Vincent, Brad Dourif, of course, is also a very big part in the film, voicing Chucky. I think the cast is just so well done. It's really well acted, very well paced. I think it's one of those movies that it kind of reminds me of Poltergeist, where it's like it's that layer of realness, but it's something that I think is very real feeling. It feels like this is a real thing. That's very realistic. Like the mom, she's very real in the movie. Kind of picks up a good job making it like a very natural and real performance. Alex Vincent did a very good job acting in the movie. It was very real. And with Poltergeist, it was just with Toby Hooper, which rest in peace, Toby Hooper passed away. Was it like a month ago now, or is it? It was very sad, it was very unfortunate, but rest in peace, Toby Hooper. I think he also really helped Spielberg add that extra layer of realness to Poltergeist, and it really made the family feel really natural and real. But with Child's Play 1, I think it's a very well-made movie. I think the story, taking itself seriously, is a very well-done movie to do. I think it's an absolute classic. I think it's very overshadowed. I think it's very overlooked. I think it's very underrated. It's a movie that a lot of people say is either too slow, or it's not really the kind of movie, or and that's totally fine on people's opinion. But I just love the first movie. Absolute classic. It's very well crafted film. But now that we're moving on to the very first sequel in the franchise, now we're talking about Child's Play 2. Sorry, Jack. He's back. Steve, if you want to kick off this discussion on Child's Play 2, you can get your thoughts on it if you want.
All right. Well, Child's Play 2, I think I used to kind of like this better than the first one. I don't anymore, because I've sort of taken a look at it through a couple different lenses and stuff like that. And I'm not a big fan of that movie, but by far, like, the best sequence in all of Child's Play, or okay, maybe not the best sequence, but up there with some of the best stuff that's ever been in the franchise, is in the last 20 minutes of that movie. Through most of the movie, it's kind of like, okay, well, this is the same old thing. It's basically the first movie, but he's in a foster home, and that's about it. And I guess that's all right. That's fine, but some of the characters are really underdeveloped, and some of the acting is a little ropey or just wooden, and the writing just doesn't seem like up to par with what the original was. The directing style is very like meh. Like, you're not trying to go over the top and try and do some really cool shots. Like, I think the first Child's Play is like exceptionally well shot. You really, it's very indicative of that 1980s aesthetic. The first movie is. This movie feels like a really kind of stale 90s feel, especially the early 90s, which I guess was kind of the thing that most horror movies were going for. But that's most horror movies in the early 90s, and most horror movies in the early 90s were not that good. So I don't really like that much. Alex Midson's still good. I like some of the gaslighting stuff that they do in the movie, where you know, it's not quite gaslighting because you know that uh, Chucky is, real and everything like that. You know Chucky's real, but it does create some tension when they have these people not believing Andy, and Chucky sort of messing with Andy in that way. I kind of like some of that tension, but honestly, it does kind of get old after a while, at least to me. But that might just be me. I do love the opening sequence when they're putting him together. I think that's great. Um, I like how he robs this, doesn't rob, but like murders this dude who's just trying to get some liquor so he can get laid. Um, um, I like that stuff, but as I said, the last 20 minutes of this movie are fantastic. Like all that stuff in the doll factory, man,
Yeah.
that is good. That's some fantastic special effects. That's probably some of the best special effects stuff that's ever been in any of the Chucky movies. Um,
Yeah.
it's somewhat like some of the most brutal stuff that's been in the Chucky movies. It's some of the scariest, I think, even though everything is sort of all out in the open and not quite like dark or anything like super dark. But when Chucky jams this knife into his bloody stump, that's creepy. That's dedication. I don't know. I really like the last 20 minutes of that movie, and when I go back and watch that movie, basically I can be doing something else and just sort of like have it on in the background. But when I get to the last 20 minutes of that movie, my eyes are glued to the screen. That's something fantastic. That's even something that I've been reading Leonard Maltin's movie guide from 1999, and strangely enough, he really liked the original Child's Play. He gave it a 3 out of 4 stars, which is amazing for him with horror movies because he hates like horror movies from the 70s and 80s. Like he's a big fan of those Universal monster movies, which of course are fantastic. All of them are great, almost. Just about all of them are great, but he really disparages like horror movies from the 80s. But Child's Play, he gave a 3 out of 4 stars, which is a really darn good rating for a cheesy 80s horror movie about a killer doll. I mean, that's a fantastic rating. And he gave Child's Play 2 like a 1.5 out of 4 stars. Obviously, not a very good rating. But he did mention that he thought that the last 20 minutes were fantastic. So, even Leonard Maltin can't get away from the fact that those last 20 minutes are just really good. So, I like parts of Child's Play 2. It's maybe not my second favorite in the franchise next to the first, but it's up there. It's pretty close. So, I say definitely a recommended movie. If you like the first one, go ahead and watch it. And I'm a fan. I'll say it. I am kind of a fan.
All right. Cool thoughts, man. Gideon, you can give us your thoughts on Child Play 2.
Well, what I wanted to say is I had to agree with Redband. I mean, the final 20 minutes of the film was really great. And I can agree with you, man. I got in horror when I was probably about 6 years old.
Yeah, same here, too. I was very young when I got into horror.
And pretty much now, when I think truly about Child's Play 2 I felt it was kind of short. I mean, I know that's kind of like weird to say that from me, but I really did enjoy this movie. It had some really great moments, like the scenes where you see Andy's adoptive parent walking down the steps. And all of a sudden, Chucky grabs like a crowbar and pulls him by his foot and says, "How's it hanging, Phil?"
Awesome.
And I'm like, I thought it was kind of funny. And I mean, I felt so bad for Andy in this. He goes through such a hard time, and nobody believes him.
Exactly. I mean, that's a really good part of the story, too.
And I think it's funny how they think he's the one who tied himself up and put socks in his mouth.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
How could a kid do that?
I know. I hate to interrupt you real quick, Gideon, but Nate, I'm gonna have to pop off for just a little bit, and I'll be right back as soon as I'm finished. Might take me about a half hour or something.
Alrighty, bro.
All right, I'll see you back in a little bit.
All right. See you, man.
Bye-bye.
Peace, bro. So, what are your like overall thoughts on the film?
I mean, it's kind of a man for me. I mean, I enjoy Chucky a lot, but I mean, most of all, I really like. I mean, I enjoyed the last 20 minutes, but I mean, I just felt like some of the characters were mean-hearted. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. For me in this movie, it's definitely a movie that, for a while, like Steve said, I was kind of just wondering, like, which one to like better, Child's Play 1 or 2. And to be honest, I think the first movie is a better quality film. I think that Child's Play 2 is a sequel that I absolutely adore. It's my favorite sequel of the franchise. I think it's got a lot of strong points to it. I have to agree with you guys. The acting does get a bit, I don't know, dodgy at times. There's a couple times where, the characters, they're not that really deeply written. While the dialogue is kind of forgettable sometimes.
Yeah.
And also, just some of the performances are just not done very well. However, I will say this though: it's a very fun time. It's a very fast-paced film. I love the score to the film. I think that Chucky is back in this movie and he's better than ever. I think that it was a good return of Chucky. It was a good return for Alex Vincent and Andy. It sucks that Catherine Hicks couldn't be in this movie. And that was also a negative thing because she was a very strong lead in the first movie. The foster parents, I guess, are okay. The stepmoms, I guess, all right. But,
I hate them.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they're not really lovable. Like, you don't love the characters, but the stepmom, I guess, was decent until she started blaming Andy for these murders and stuff. That was the point where I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. But I think that, what was that girl's name? Was it Zoe? The girl who was pretty cool. Yeah, she was pretty cool.
I mean, you know that she left like a lasting kind of impression on Andy's life because in the first Chucky, he had a picture of her.
Yeah, which is really awesome. It's Kyle, it's not what I said. It's Kyle. Christina.
I wonder if she's gonna be the new Curse of Chucky. No, not Curse of Chucky. I mean, Cold Chucky.
I don't know, man. It definitely would be a very interesting thing to see. Kyle come back into the franchise, be awesome.
You think she like adopted Andy?
It froze up. You there?
Yeah.
All right, it froze up for a second. I was kind of scared. I was like, oh.
Do you think she like adopted Andy?
I think that definitely that happened. I think that obviously, like you said, she's a big influence on Andy's life. I think that, yeah, she definitely probably adopted him. They became good friends, and they seemed like Kyle helped him a lot through things. But I don't know about that because in Child's Play 3, Andy kind of said he went from home to home. So maybe, I would say maybe he went back and maybe he tried to raise him or something, possibly. But with Child's Play 3, he said he pretty much bounced from home to home, so I'm not really sure. But Child's Play 2 is just like, I don't know, the film in general is very well made. It's a very well made sequel. I really enjoy the sequel in general. It's definitely the strongest sequel. It's definitely the sequel with the most impact to it. It's definitely a movie that I think is just, it's not on par with the first movie, but it's pretty daggone close. It's very, very decently written. I enjoy I will agree with you guys on this too. The last bit of the movie, like pretty much the third act of the film, is freaking amazing. I mean, the idea of this pretty much maze of good guys alls, that's pretty awesome. Chucky went through a lot of stuff, putting the knife in the hand, the lines, deliveries, the really awesome kills. I mean, I thought it just brought in a really fun atmosphere to the third act. I thought it was just very in general. entertaining for that film. But yeah, I really
Yeah.
enjoyed Child's Play 2. Overall, the movie is very impressive. I enjoyed it as a sequel. It's one of my favorite sequels, and I love it. But if to continue on with the franchise, now we're going to be getting to Child's Play 3. Look Who's Stalking. Now, this is a film that came out, I believe, right after Child's Play 2. And Gideon, if you want to give your thoughts on Child's Play 3, you can give your thoughts on it if you want.
Well, truthfully, I have nothing really kind of good to say about this film. I mean, pretty much, it was kind of a meh for me.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely heard that from a lot of people. Like the Child's Play 3, it's a very underrated film. I'm not really too sure. I don't know if maybe I'm just not seeing it the same way, but I'm just not really too sure why this movie gets so much hate. I mean, for me, it's definitely not as good as the first movie. I wouldn't even say it's as good as the second film, but I'd still say it's a pretty fun time. I'd still say it's a pretty good movie that I really enjoy. I enjoy a lot of the ideas. I enjoy the military school idea. I enjoy Chucky being back. And Chucky's design is just very fun. Huh?
Presto, you're bald.
Presto.
I hated that guy so much. I hated the fuck out of him.
Wasn't he from Hellraiser?
Presto, you're dead.
Was he? Yeah, it's Presto, you're dead. Also, the scene that kind of bothered me is they put lipstick on Chucky. The girls are put lipstick on him, like, come on.
I loved it.
His body. Got some decent lines in it, too. Messing with the mail is a federal offense. Who the freak are you? I can go on and on. Like, this movie's got some great lines to it. I don't know. It's a movie that does. It's just had to be like despised and hated, and it's not good. It's bad. But I never really understood that. I get it's not as high quality as the first two movies, but it's still a pretty fun, fast-paced slasher film with some really good elements to it. I like that Andy Barclay is still in the franchise. It's a story. He's a lot older. I like the idea that.
By the way.
Yeah.
I don't mean to cut you off. Self-promotion here.
Alrighty.
What I wanted to say, though, is my next review will be, or my new review that I'm starting with my series, where I'm going to be talking about all sorts of media, like horror, comic books, and graphic novels, and cartoons.
Mm-hmm.
Which I will be taking requests for. But I will be talking about the art of Jonah Vasquez and Johnny the Homicidal Maniac.
Wow. That's cool, man. Hang on. I'm going to be right back. Somebody's knocking on my door. I'll be right back, guys. Gideon, you can keep talking if you want.
Okay. Did you know that Nate doesn't like kittens? Do you know that he kills them with a blender and eats them? I know I do. Stay in church, kids.
Oh my goodness, Gideon, what are you telling my audience?
Nothing. I said nothing.
I hope not. Do not disturb their minds, please. I'm just kidding now.
Ah, kicked you the big brown bahookie.
But Child's Play 3, I mean, I don't know. It's pretty fun. I enjoy it. It's decent, I guess. And, you know, definitely a very overlooked film in the franchise. But what would you say, like, some of your biggest issues with Part 3 is for you?
Well, I really felt like it didn't need to happen.
I mean,
most of all.
I mean,
it's just
a sequel was not, like, necessary and needed. I would also agree with that point.
I mean, pretty much the way I felt with it, though, was pretty much it was just pretty much sort of there for pretty much just for the sake of being there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And we just, like, we sit there and be like, what the hell was that?
Well, I do think it's like one of those more hollow sequels. It's like the one that doesn't really have a strong purpose, you know, especially with the ending of Child's Play 2. It's like, all right, this is a good ending for the story. Andy and Kyle are okay; they survived, and you know that should be the end of the story. And like a year later, Part 3 gets released. And it's like, man, what a good ending! I think they should have built it up a little bit more. Have it come out maybe 5 years later or 6 years later. Have a good return, not the very next year, because with Child's Play 2, or 2 is ending. I'm all over the place. But with that finale, that ending, it's like, why would they make a sequel to that? But, you know, I don't hate it, but I can definitely see where it's coming from. It's like, it's not really a needed sequel, but it doesn't really bother me. I don't know. It's one of those kind of movies. It doesn't really bother me that much.
Well, I mean,
So,
for
like,
me, it was kind of strange. It was just like, I mean, I just felt like it didn't really need to happen.
would you say that it's probably better than the more comedic ones, or would it be probably not as good as, like, Bride and Seed? Or would you say it's a little bit better?
Well, I kind of have a hate-love relationship for Seed and Bride.
Oh, you do?
Truthfully, I actually, the first ever Chucky movie I ever saw was actually Bride Chucky.
Mm-hmm. I actually grew up a lot with Bride of Chucky. That and Child's Play 2 I used to watch a lot as a kid.
I mean, I thought it was kind of funny.
Yeah, Bride of Chucky I think is a lot more funnier than Seed. Well, we'll get to my thoughts on Seed. Maybe not. Maybe in this video. I'm not sure. Maybe we'll wrap it up tonight. I'm not too sure. But with Child's Play 3, though, I think it's a decent movie. But to move on with the other sequels, we do have the next movie, which is Bride of Chucky. Now, this is a film that came out a little while later, and it really kicked off this sort of separate, I don't want to say separate series, but a series that is very different than the original Child's Play franchise. It kicked off sort of a franchise that really focused on Chucky, and it also really focused on the comedic tone. And for me, how I feel about that is to go comedic tone. All right, I support that.
Yeah.
The only thing I ask for the comedic tone is for it to be funny and not annoying and not get old. And I feel like Bride of Chucky so far, out of the funnier movies, like there's only 2 of them, but out of both movies, I think Bride does it better than Seed, because the whole movie of Seed is really nothing but a parody. I guess it's not really classified as a parody, but the whole freaking movie is like that. With Bride, I think that it's this very serious story with comedic element. I think they're 2 different films. They have different elements to them. Like, for me, Bride of Chucky is a much more darker. I love the atmosphere of Bride of Chucky. I really, that's one of the stronger things about the 4th movie, is that it's a very well toned, very well lit, very well atmosphere, very well done as far as atmosphere goes, kind of film. And I know that he would go. The director at that film also go on the next Freddy versus Jason and carried over that sort of, I want to say, gothic tone, that gothic punk rock tone. I love the Rob Zombie, songs in the movie. I
love me some goth girls.
The goth girls. I mean, yeah, Jennifer Tilly.
On me, living dead girl. that was my Bobcat Goldthwait Rob Zombie impression.
Personally, though,
Ronald Reagan is old.
Gideon, are you okay?
I don't even fucking know anymore.
It's okay, I got that sometimes too, bro.
It's been a long day.
Yeah, it's been a very I mean, I don't know. I guess it's been a very mellow week for me. But today
I'm gonna lay in this bed, read some Hellboy, and calm in my sheets.
Gosh dang, Gideon.
I also started skateboarding. Now I can be a shoebie.
But for Bride of Chucky, though, are you a fan of Jennifer Tilly? Because for me, I'm personally not. But I know that some people love the character and love the actress. So, like, what's your opinions on Jennifer Tilly? I'm not really a big fan of the character.
I used to actually have a love triangle to her. I thought she was actually pretty beautiful. And
She is pretty. She's pretty.
And I mean, it kind of became a joke on itself. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, like the people make fun of her a lot in Family Guy. They make fun of her voice. That's just her normal talking voice.
Right.
And truthfully, I actually love the character Tiffany, because
I know it's a very mixed bag though. Like a lot of people love it, a lot of people don't. I don't know. Just for me, I always found the character to not really have much to it personally.
Yeah.
And I think they took the comedy a lot overboard with Tiffany too much. And it's definitely a good idea to have a Bride of Chucky film, sort of copy that Bride of Frankenstein type stuff. But I don't know, to make it like with her comedic scenes, like Voodoo for Dummies and talking about I rather date a G.I. Joe and all that stuff. Like that stuff, I kind of was like, man, the comedic part did not really match the character personally. Sometimes, all right, I got a chuckle out of it, but a lot of the times it was just for Tiffany. It was just not funny, and I don't know. There really wasn't much for me personally to the character. I think Chucky just kind of, I don't know. I think that in this movie he's having a fun time and stuff like that. And you know, Tiffany, I think it's a decent idea, but I'm just not really a big fan of Jennifer Tilly's acting performance in the film. I'm not really a big fan of the character, Tiffany. But you know, it's definitely fun for people of the character. Just personally, I'm not really a big fan of the character. But for me, Bride of Chucky is a very well-toned film. Has some.
There's so much fan
opinion,
art.
Oh God! Don't even begin to say because I've heard stories. All right.
Chucky, sir, marry me. Oh, God.
Well, there is a scene in this movie that probably inspired all that dang fan artwork.
What was it?
I don't know. It was kind of one of those things where I didn't hate it because it was so obnoxious that it was kind of funny.
I cursed at Martha Stewart.
That's another thing I mentioned.
Cooking night.
The Martha Stewart jokes. Oh my God, they were all in this movie. All in this movie from Tiffany. The Martha Stewart jokes. Or was it in the second? Was it in the Sea of Chucky? I don't remember. I think it's both.
It was the Bride of Chucky. It was definitely the Bride of Chucky.
Yeah. But I don't know. I think this movie is like it's a very well toned, very well comedic wise film. Chucky's great in it. The idea of Tiffany and Chucky being the bride in the room and all that stuff, that was pretty cool. To have a new approach to a story. To have a new way to make a Chucky film was pretty neat. But
I heard this
problem is I thought the movie was, for me, I thought it was very slow. I don't remember if I said that in a review or not, but I think it's a very slow film. And also the acting, the story, and the characters are big factors in a film. And those are all terrible. Like the story's terrible, the acting was terrible. I did not care about any of these characters. Like seriously, that's a big chunk of the film. That's one of the main things. You gotta have good acting and a good story. And if those being terrible, that's why for me that this movie it's okay, it's all right, it's decent. It's better than Sea of Chucky. I can say that before we even get into Sea of Chucky. But it's a decent film. But I think it has a lot of problems. But what's your like main overall thoughts on it? Or would you like rank it and see how it is?
Bride of Chucky, 6 out of 10.
Oh wow! I don't know if I give it a 6. I'd probably give it maybe a 5.
Yeah, probably me too.
It's decent. It's decent.
Yeah, I don't mean to sound like a bummer or something or doodly bummer or some shit, but I had to get off here at 10.
Alrighty, we're probably going to wrap up this group. Actually, we're probably going to cut this off from right here and talk about, in part 2 of this discussion, we'll probably talk about Curse, Seed, and also we can talk about our thoughts on the upcoming film Cult of Chucky.
Okay, can I say one thing though about it?
Yeah, sure.
I am actually pretty stoked for Cold. I think this is going to be a really new kind of throwback and a new kind of idea for Chucky.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's going to be a fun time, and I can't wait for it, man. To be honest, when I first heard about Cult, when I heard the name, I was like, like, why is it called Cult?
The new poster for it looks amazing.
Yeah, and the poster, the trailers, the clips, the photos that I've seen from the film so far, it's been really hyping me up, and I'm really looking forward to it now.
Hopefully, this goes played in theaters.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that it really does, because I seen Curse of Chucky on DVD, but I really wish I could have seen it in theaters, because I actually really enjoy that. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to that in the next part of the discussion. But you got anything you want to say before we actually shut down the broadcast? Alrighty.
That is all.
As you guys heard, that's the closing statement to the broadcast. I want to thank Gideon and Steve. I know Steve was going to join back, but we're actually unfortunately going to wrap the show right now. So, Steve, if you're watching, sorry, man, we had to wrap up pretty early. As actually the goal was to last till 10, so I was probably going to wrap it up too. So, Steve, if you're watching, sorry, man. But I want to say thanks to Steve for joining the broadcast. I want to say thanks to Gideon for joining the broadcast. It was a very fun return to the discussion videos, and thank you guys so much. And it was a very fun first part of the Child's Play discussion. So thanks again, Gideon. Thanks again, Steve, and I will see you guys.
I like you.
I will see you guys in the next review. The Explorer of Horror.
Pass.
What?
Watch
Strange Pass. Watch Strange Pass. Look it up on Gideon's channel.
Name's my right-hand man.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on that as well. Definitely go check out that video. We're going to start doing some more podcasts on Gideon's channel, which I can't wait for. Forgot to mention that. Thanks for bringing it up, because I forgot to mention that. But yeah, definitely go check out the Strange Cast broadcast, which is going to be on, or the Strange Cast podcast, which is going to be on Gideon's channel. We're going to start doing some more episodes of that eventually, but we're doing that right now. But the first episode is out. If you guys want to check it out, you guys can. Talk about all kinds of cool stuff. But anyways, guys, thanks, Gideon. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, guys, for watching. And Bob the Raptor, thanks for watching. Quick shout out to him. He's really awesome. And, yeah, thanks for watching the broadcast, guys. The Explorer of Horror out. See you guys later.